Hey, Jigna! We're back again. Guess what we're talking about? Do you know? Have any idea?
Well, tell us about it.
Well, it's a whole new world with the college grad edition. And we will be talking about the struggles that college grads have entering the job market during COVID-19, plans that got postponed, and maybe we're going to get some stories on what's going on, some advice, perspective. So we've got two very intelligent young ladies we're going to be talking with, and I'm looking forward to learning a lot from them.
Absolutely. Let's go and have a chat. Well, so here we are. We have Jessica Liston and Bella Agura on the line today. Welcome, ladies.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you.
We're excited to have some new blood, some new grads out there for the world to, bring us new hope.
Yeah, absolutely. And what a whirlwind it's been. It should be this exciting time of life. And it still is, I think, in some ways, but quite a bit of it is sort of consumed with everything that's going on in the world. I mean, you guys have been sort of thrown in, right, into this new economy, new world, just everything is different. None of us know how to navigate through it, let alone you guys who are just entering the job market. So we'd love to talk a little bit about that. And before we go into that, let's go ahead and learn a little bit about you guys. Jessica, would you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you've been doing since graduation?
Yeah, sure. So hi, I'm Jessica. I just graduated from Columbia. So I'm based out of New York now, and I've kind of just been hanging out. So, learning to cook, been reading a lot for fun recently, which I haven't done a little bit because school got, so busy.
Okay, so tell everybody, Jessica, what your major is in, because I think this is really impressive.
Sure. So I majored in astrophysics.
Astrophysics. Can you believe
like
that?
A rocket science.
I know. Like, you know how people can say, you can't say, when people say, well, it's not rocket science. Like, she can actually legitimately use that phrase to tell people when something is not that difficult. Like, I'm so jealous. Like, it's like totally legit for her to use that phrase for people.
I should build that in more often. I don't use that nearly enough.
Oh, yeah. There's lots of phrases I'm sure we can come up with for you. I'm like, yeah, I think it's pretty impressive. So, I think we
just be aware they might just be mom jokes coming your way, so you might have to pick them out.
So the rocket science an astrophysicist, what did you want to do when you grew up? Like, how did you?
Yeah, so whenever I was little, I used to always say that I wanted to be an astronaut. I feel like common goal for a little kid, but I kind of never lost that fascination with space. Just kind of I feel like a lot of kids go through a space phase where they're super into space, and I feel like I never quite left mine.
That's awesome.
So I, at this point, I'm not sure if astronaut is completely realistic, but I would definitely love to work for NASA or some other space exploration company in some way, just because I absolutely love that field. I think it's amazing. It's very inspiring. It's really cool.
We have Bella here. Bella, tell us a little bit about yourself.
First of all, Jessica, you are so awesome.
Thanks.
A literal rocket scientist. Well, I'm Bella, and I graduated from UT in the spring. And
I'll forgive you for that. I'm an Aggie, so.
There's no bad blood here.
What did you get your degree in at UT?
Although my parents would have loved me to do STEM like Jessica, I actually was a liberal arts major. So
I was too.
So I got my degree in government because I've always loved public policy, politics, law, foreign relations, and I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And because of that, I'm also pre-law. So next year I will be attending law school.
Nice. That's awesome. If you love the government, maybe there's a track there to help reform and be next set of awesome politicians and rocket scientists out there.
I would hope so. Yeah.
There's hope for us, Jigna.
Love
There's
together.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about how things have changed. What were your sort of aspirations when you entered college and before COVID hit? I mean, you guys were so close to graduating. How did that change for you? Bella, do you want to start, and then we'll go to Jessica?
Yeah. Well, probably like any other college graduate, or recent graduate, you it's not like your intention to graduate and then move back to your hometown and live with your parents. Your intention is to graduate, have a job lined up. That way, as soon as you graduate, you know where you're going. Specifically, a job that's related to what you studied for 4 years in. That would be the hope. But like you guys know, COVID changed everything. So our previous hopes, they no longer came into fruition because the job market, you know, it's really, really hard to find a job. You're competing against people who have much more experience than you, and people aren't hiring, there's hiring freezes. So unfortunately, I was one of those people who was not able to fulfill like the recent graduate kind of dream.
So how has that changed over for you? It sounds like you're maybe taking a year off or prepping for law school. Yeah. What are you doing now?
I'm taking a gap year and I'll be attending law school next fall because another reason is a lot of people don't want to attend graduate school, whether it be med school, law school, or like getting your master's online. There are some schools that are reducing tuition, but for most schools, and even UT has raised tuition during COVID, a lot of people don't want to move and pay for all the expenses that come with school, and it's all online. Well, another thing that's changed is the kind of jobs I'm applying for. Because if this was normal times, non-COVID, there'd be more jobs available to recent graduates. But now there's not, because you're competing against people who have much more experience, way older, have like 10 years of experience, and you virtually have none. And so I'm having to apply for jobs that I wouldn't be otherwise. I'm applying for jobs that I'd be making way less, considering I have a bachelor's degree, and applying for jobs that's like asking for high school diplomas, like minimum, but yet here I am applying for them. So that's something else that's new that I didn't intend on happening.
Yep. Yeah.
How about you, Jessica? How did your aspirations, your plannings change before and after COVID?
Yeah, for sure. So for a few years now, it's been my plan for right after college to join the Peace Corps. Just because I've always wanted to kind of like go live somewhere else for a while and like, get some experience teaching. And I just thought it could be this really cool thing to do, especially while I'm young and like don't have a ton of like roots put down in like any specific place. So yeah, I applied to the Peace Corps in December of 2019. And then I interviewed for it in January and I got accepted in February. So all of this was like right before, the pandemic hit. And so it was like a dream come true when I got accepted. I was like jumping up and down in my room, like super excited that like my next plans were panning out. But not so fast. Because so I was supposed to depart. Actually, I was going to be a science teacher in Mozambique. And I was supposed to go in 3 days from now.
Wow.
But it was deferred. So kind of when the pandemic hit, the Peace Corps sort of hit pause on everything, and they brought all their current volunteers that were out all over the world back to the US. And they kind of let each country decide when they want American volunteers come back. And so the Mozambican government and the Peace Corps, I guess, in conjunction decided that their volunteers should come back in August 2021. So like a full year later than what I had been planning. So yeah, it was kind of wild. Like, I feel like I'm in a little bit of this limbo right now of like, I thought I was like immediately moving on to the next thing, but instead it's like, oh my gosh, I've got a whole year. So yeah, I've been on the job hunt as well.
So I'm gonna let both of you know, I always have this fascination with generations. So my background's in learning and development, and probably 10, 12 years ago, a former colleague and I, we did this whole research thing about different generational learning styles, and really kind of looking at this next generation who's just come out of college and they're also in middle school, high school, this Gen Z, right? And they say everything happens in these formative years. And while your formative years have kind of passed, I still suspect the formative events of right now have impacted you greatly as a generation. So, I'm curious if you guys feel that way, and if so, what do you think those generational impacts and trends are for Gen Z?
as the, speaker for my generation, I feel like it's a little hard to assess just yet, just because we don't know how long it's going to last. It's different if it's kind of a, 6-month hiatus from life versus like a multiple year long kind of thing. For like kind of our exact year, I think it's maybe like the year right before and right after us. It's particularly interesting, I think, because it's like right at the moment kind of the culmination of all of our achievements, and the next step is supposed to happen, and you're supposed to get on with your life and like the big thing, and then we're kind of like the whole world suddenly kind of stops for a little bit, and like a lot of the jobs are no longer available. I know a lot of people who like have had their start dates pushed back, like me, or who are like deferring their grad school because they're don't want to go online, as Bella was mentioning. So it's kind of like, what are we supposed to do now? Like, this was supposed to be our big moment, and instead we're kind of being told to wait.
So, because one of the things they talked about was that Gen Z would be like millennials on steroids, right? And so not the digital nativeness, and then there's just like this big gleam of hope and optimism, right? That they just thought propel us into, like, they almost wanted to call you the green generation at some point. They were starting to talk about that because there's be so much focus in environmental. What I'm curious to know too, and maybe Bella has some thoughts on this as well, but is it if you guys are going to be more pessimistic though than millennials based on this event?
I think, well, there's four main points to my answer. The first one being, like what Jessica said, economic setbacks. This can come into fruition to a lot of different avenues, right? So because of the economic setbacks, probably it'll be harder for us to find jobs, like we said. The housing market will be bad for our generation. The other thing is, well, you said we could be more pessimistic. That could be a good thing, actually. One thing I and other people from my generation have noticed is that this pandemic has exposed a lot of the cracks within our system. So a lot of people from my generation is trying to fix that.
Awesome.
So
we hope so.
We hope so. So maybe seeing the bad things that are happening right now will be able for us to forge a better future. The other thing is the uncertainty of seeking higher education. Prior to the pandemic, and usually in years of good economy, a lot of people are able to go to college and see college as less of a risk. But now, whenever it's really hard to find a job, people are thinking to themselves, is college worth it? Should I go to college, spend all this money, or should I just skip college altogether and then try and find a paying job to feed my family? So these are conversations we're having that you probably wouldn't have in a pandemic or in a recession like we're in right now. And then the other thing is, okay, if you do decide to go to college, do you pursue STEM like Jessica or the arts like me? Because a lot of people would think, well, if I will go to college, spend all that money and go through the opportunity cost, then I'm gonna go do STEM. I'm gonna be a doctor, because right now people need doctors. People don't need philosophers, right? Like I'm not gonna major in like logic or music or whatever. So these are questions we're having right now that probably we didn't have previously.
Well, and I would say I already know. So I have my 4 main points. You're gonna make a great lawyer already, because that was so lawyerish to say. I love it. That's awesome. So I think that is really probably your calling, Bella, just based on how you answered that question. And thank you. Yeah, the insight. I think you're right. It exposed the cracks in our system, and you guys have the ability to see that there's a hope to do that. Because being a Gen Xer, we are more like, we were latchkey kids, and we did see a housing market fall, as you're saying. So it's an the thing. We've the big recession we grew up through, an oil crisis. A high divorce rate, which I think we're going to see happen again here. And unfortunately, with the number of people who had to live full time with their significant others, they say the divorce rates and
there's trauma, there's abuse going on. It's pretty
really
bad. I remember, coming out of college, I think all I wanted to do is get through the week so I can go hang out with my friends and go watch a movie or, go out to eat and stuff. And then there's Bella and Jessica who are trying to change the world. Like, what is going on here? That's a positive that kind of came out of the this pandemic, the recession, right? It in some form or fashion required the youth to grow up a little bit faster and in a good way. I don't think it's all bad. So we're sorry that some of your youth is kind of taken away from you, but on the bright side of things, we're benefiting from it. So there's that. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Sure.
So I have a couple more questions for you regarding Gen Z. Well, first, do you guys feel like you're part of the Gen Z, or do you think of yourselves more millennials?
What do they call you guys in college?
I'm not quite sure. So I've heard that the cutoff for like the first Gen Zers were born in 1997, which is when I was born. But that would put me in a different generation than my sister, who was born in 96, which like doesn't quite.
Yeah, you're both on the cusp. So you could have perspectives from both generations, because you're right on that cusp. Like how Jigna's on the cusp as a millennial and an Xer.
Okay, so I got a Gen Z is the newest, and it's 96 to born between 96 to 2015. So between 5 and 24-year-old. Yeah,
and actually they'll cut that off again, just because they will cut off that Gen Z to probably end at kids who are about 10 years old right now, because they look for that. Like I said, a big event that happens in formative years to cut it off. And that big event right now is the pandemic, and then plus all the other political mess we see going on. So they don't talk anything about after Gen Z for whatever reason. Well, and my daughter told me, she said, well, they're going to be Gen Alpha.
That's what I've heard as well.
Yeah, Gen Alpha is what they're talking about.
Back to the beginning of the alphabet.
That sounds really cool.
I know. I'm like,
Gen
Alpha.
It's a really cool name.
It's a cool name. Right. And what's
Generation
weird, like,
Alpha.
I don't know how they went from boomer to X, like,
Yeah.
That was weird. So anyway, but yeah, so thinking about that generation, again, so you guys would consider yourselves a Gen Z? Yeah, no.
Okay. More or less.
Yeah. And what does that mean to you? Like when you think about what does it mean to be a Gen Z?
It's kind of scary to me because it means that people are looking to you, right? Like you're the new generation. You're supposed to be the future, the hope. So it kind of puts pressure on you. You're supposed to solve all the problems that the previous generation did and not remake them and not make new problems, which is, like I said, kind of a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I remember like pretty clearly at one point in elementary school, it was like the first time that we were learning about climate change in any way. And the teacher said something along the lines of like, this is the problem that my generation has created and it will be your generation's job to fix it. And I was like, what?
Like, thanks.
Why are we cleaning up your messes? And like, of course it was an oversimplification, but I was like, I remember being like, this is a lot to put on me. Like you fix it.
Yeah, it's when you're a kindergarten, that's a whole weight of the world on you. I think we were sort of taught something similar, is that we have to fix what the boomers messed up, and I'm sure they had something similar the generation before that. So
Gen X, we didn't care. No,
we didn't care.
Yeah, no, it was like, well, we were just left alone. We were left at home.
Are you sure about that? Oh yeah, there's
I'm sure about that. You know, like I'm part of a group on Facebook that's like, if you were Gen X, you remember this, and it's kind of funny, like the memes that go around, stuff around about like, we're the generation who survived no seatbelts. We didn't wear bicycle helmets. You know, we were left at home by ourselves, unsupervised to cook. You know, we're like, we got spanked. We, with a belt. You know, and all these things that are like, you know, and we survived. So, but we're a much smaller group of individuals out there as well. So, the thing I think is interesting about Gen Z, though, more than even millennials, is how much more connected they are with their network globally than just the way they meet and they know people across the world in their network much faster, much quicker. And it's the norm versus for other generations where it became a norm maybe for business. But I think in millennials, it maybe became the norm more in college. But I think for Gen Z, it became a norm even prior to college. Probably you started to meet people or know people you connected with globally or more dispersed from your immediate area where you lived in. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would to some extent. I think I've heard something about kind of like this generation, or like recently generations have been shaped by their relationship with technology. So like millennials are more like, as they grew up, kind of technology was developing with them, and like when they were really little, it was like, you know, not much, in terms of like really high tech stuff. And then as, they grew up, it became more and more advanced. And then our generation is pretty much from the age that we were like old enough to use, kind of phones and advanced technology, they were available to us. So yeah, I think part of the global network is probably with that. Just like, I feel like all of my friends have been on the internet since we were really little. A lot of people had phones starting when they were in elementary school, and I think that's new.
Yeah, I didn't have my first phone until grad school. And
yeah,
it was a brick. It was really big, had a big antenna.
The Nokia thing is, that's amazing. I have a kid who's 7 years old, and I don't think I want to give him a phone this young.
Yeah, we kind of made a rule. It was like sixth grade. Once you got into middle school, and you might be doing activities after school, and you needed to get a hold of me. That was more of the rule. But I think too, though, what you said around like the digital nativeness, what really scares me is I had a friend tell me the other day, she has her granddaughter lives with her, and her granddaughter's 5 in kindergarten, starting the Zoom calls for kindergarten. She's like, imagine getting a kindergartner doing Zoom for school. And I said, yeah, the thing about that is, imagine what she's going to be like when she's like 10. She's going to run meetings on Zoom better than any CEO in the country. So, it's going to be a whole new ball game with that Gen Alpha even.
Yeah, my son knew how to, FaceTime at the age of 2. He knew how to navigate through the iPad and everything. So it's what you grew up on, right? So
what's interesting, so you've always had like, you've had phones and computers around. And what both of you said too was like, online school doesn't sound like fun to you, or you don't want to spend the money to do that. And which goes back, I'm gonna jump back because just why I'm saying this is when I was doing that research with a colleague like 12 years ago, that was kind of the notion, was everybody kept thinking everything would go to online learning. And our argument was, it was kind of like like music, why music has gone to being from live concerts all the way to being on the radio or your iPod, that eventually people would still want to go back to the concert because the experience would be better in person versus just having the radio on, because the radio starts to become just kind of mundane, or you've got it playing. But that would always be the biggest appeal, and we kind of think learning is that same way for people, which I'm glad to hear that stayed true with the Gen Z, because at that time we were talking about millennials. So what about the notion then, so let me jump and it takes me a while to get to my thoughts, so just bear with me here.
Okay. All good.
Getting to the notion of that, let's say you get a job, and before you go back to grad school, Bella, or before you go off to the Peace Corps, Jessica, and they want you to work remotely like this with a computer screen and see people on, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it goes back to, we're in a pandemic, a job is a job.
But some companies are saying they're going to stay like this for a long time, or maybe even indefinitely. So
right now, people are less picky. Definitely, people are less picky. So if I find a job that pays well and it'd be good experience, and it's kind of the field that I want to be in, if it's online, it's online. I completely understand. It wouldn't be what I would choose, but like I said, now's not the time to be picky. So I would definitely do it.
So let's say the pandemic's over, and they want to, because people want to believe in like everybody wants to work remotely. Like they think that's like what people want. You hear that? Or do you think that's what you would want, is to stay remote like that? If pandemic's over, it's not an issue. Like having a job is not an issue. Let's just pretend that's all like.
What's your preference, right? In terms of work from home versus going into the office.
Okay.
Thank you, Jigna.
My preference is definitely to go in office, because I'm a very social person. I love to interact with people. Depending on like your line of work, especially mine, if you're to be an attorney, relationships with your clients is very important, with other attorneys, networking, versus if you're at home, that definitely closes you off to all the potential connections you could be making if you were in an office. Versus people like my mom, who does coding for CVS, all she does all day is type on her laptop for like 8 hours. And the previous thought is like, okay, well, you have to go in an office to be productive. You can't be productive at home. But now what employers are seeing is that the numbers that they're getting like from their employees, they're just as or even more productive now. And so I think companies are switching to being online because it's like less traffic, right? So like less carbon emissions, driving to work. Also, companies can save a lot more money by not having to keep the lights on at their building, pay for rent, all of this. So it just depends on your field.
It's a good thought. Okay.
Yeah, I will say I am super happy that there's not a lot of traffic out there. So thank you, COVID, for that part.
Yeah, really.
Silver lining.
Yeah.
Thoughts, Jessica?
So my field, I guess, is a little different in terms of what astrophysics has kind of evolved into right now is something that's heavily code based, and it's like all pretty much done on the computer. So it is something that really has the capacity to be remote, and I've done research remotely. I've been doing that for, a long time now. I started working on a research project last summer in person, and I've been working on it since then remotely. And I think it's fine. Like I can get the same amount of work done, but there's something about being in the office that I really value. I think something about being able to like pop my head into the professor's door or like a colleague's door and be like, hey, I really don't understand this. Can you help me with it? Or just like, hey, how's your day? Just like hanging out a little bit. That social aspect I think it's really valuable, and something that's a little harder to achieve naturally on Zoom.
So here's my point on all of this is to tell employers, because they wanted to believe that Gen Z is not going to be apt at being able to be with people in person and talk to people. That's a lie. They like being in person. They like talking to people. They don't want to just text you. They don't want to just send you memes. They don't want to just be on TikTok or whatever it is, or Instagram or Snapchat, whatever they're using these days. They do enjoy being in person. So if you think that just abandoning office spaces are great because the next generation coming up would love that, you might be wrong. So just something to think about.
But we also want to text you, and we also want to send you memes,
Absolutely, but that's not what you want to do all day.
True. Very true.
I hope you're right, because you do like to see people and pop in that so.
What other challenges have you been sort of experiencing, and maybe you've been speaking with your friends about it and any of your friends experienced?
We're up against a bunch of people who are all more experienced just because a lot of people are unemployed right now. So the ones of us who are, so young, it's a little harder whenever you're going up against kind of a bigger pool than used to be. There's also a lot of people, I think a common pathway out of college is to get an internship, like during one of your summers, and then, maybe get a full-time offer from that place. So for people like me who weren't really planning to go that route, it's like suddenly a little bit less feasible not to. Pretty much the only people I know who have good steady employment my year are people who were in that situation, and even some of them, their full-time offers have been canceled or pushed back. So yeah, it's kind of difficult. I feel like everyone's really at a different place. So some people did have those internships and have full-time offers now, and to kind of not compare ourselves against other peers, because everyone's in such wildly different places right now.
Yeah.
Everyone
I hadn't thought about that.
Wildly different places. I love that. That's so, it's profound. No, it's true. Even internships, non-paying work is suffering because a lot of companies just can't. It's not feasible for interns to come in, and a lot of these opportunities need to be in-person opportunities. So I can imagine how it sort of delays progress in a sense, economic and educational.
Yeah, and like the year coming up right after us, like a lot of them aren't doing any internships or any kind of research or whatever they would do the summer after their junior year, which is like kind of a critical summer if you're looking for a full-time job to come out of that internship. So I think a lot of them are also going to be a little, you know, behind the curve in terms of finding employment.
Yeah. Back to Jessica's point, talking about the struggles of being a recent graduate in this pandemic. I know the general consensus whenever COVID-19 first came to the US was that it was going to be the great equalizer. It would affect the rich and the poor of every color. Everybody would struggle. We're all in this together. And you see a lot of celebrities like singing Kumbaya songs, putting it online. You're like, wow, this is so beautiful, right? Well, it's awful, but hey, at least we're all equal in the eyes of COVID. Well, I think we now realize that's completely false and not true, because disproportionately affecting people of color and then also people who have less money, right? Like the wealthy can still escape New York City and go live in the Hamptons or other areas of the US with less stringent like COVID like laws. And then the other thing is, though, I know for myself, like I said, I'm applying for jobs that I wouldn't have otherwise applied for. Like, for example, a couple of days ago, I applied for a government job that only pays $13.50 an hour, and I have a bachelor's degree, so that isn't ideal. But nevertheless, it's a government job. I'd be working in a court, so it's experience. Versus I have friends who are working at grocery stores, H-E-B, Walmart, making $15 to $20 an hour. So it's forcing you to question, do I value experience, making less money, or do I just want to make more money? But then the other thing that you need to understand is not everyone can think that way. Not everyone can be like me, where it's like, well, I don't have responsibilities. I don't have any children. I'm not married. I don't have to pay for my own rent, my own food. So I'm in a position where I'm able to make less money. Other people, they can't do that. They have people to support, so they're unable to be in the jobs that they want to have and are qualified to have because of their responsibilities.
Well, and I would tell you too, if you've never read the book, and we mentioned one of our first episodes is What Color is Your Parachute? Talks about transferable skills. And I would tell you, if you have friends too that are feeling down because maybe they took a job that they're not really excited about, there's always transferable skills in anything you took. So like, let's say you're working at a local grocery store, you could be learning a lot about supply chain, and you have an opportunity to go in and tell the manager at that store, hey, I want to learn more about things here so that I understand how a supply chain works. Because I mean, right now too, we have such a weird, broken supply chain. It's so weird. My husband, I told him to go to the store yesterday. I wanted green beans because when I was at Costco, there were no green beans. Like usually I buy like a 12-pack of green beans because like that's like the one vegetable I get my kids to eat. There were none. So when he went to he came back with French green beans, or I don't know, something else, like not normal green beans. And I was like, why did you get these? He goes, because that's all they had. He's like, almost the entire food can aisle was out. And I was like, what do you mean it was out? And he's like, he said, must be everywhere, not just Costco. So again, it's like starting to understand you have this opportunity, like hopefully, and this is something I would say to anybody, if you're sitting in one of those kind of jobs, take an opportunity and look at it and open your mind and think about what's really going on here. What's happening in the supply chain? Is the distribution, the fact that is it less food? Is it the canning process? Is it, we know more people are eating at home. So, and then on top of that, then what's going to happen to the supply chain as things gradually go back to the other side of more normalcy, maybe in the next 2 years? And how does that supply chain readjust itself? And are you thinking about how to help those businesses readjust that supply chain? Because if you've never played the beer game from MIT, I highly encourage you to go online. There's like an online version you can play, and it will teach you about how supply chains get broken up and ruined. Did either of y'all play that game in college?
No.
No, it's awesome. It's like these two guys from MIT had to develop a game, like it's like in the early 80s or late 70s. They decided to use beer as their product. And they take you through this process of like, and you sit at different roles and you don't know what, people have one number and they have to guess to like what to buy, and the whole supply chain gets disrupted at some point, and you have like too much beer and people aren't buying it, and then it's just and it usually comes out as a mess because people are not really paying attention to what's happening in the supply chain. So it's a good little thing to read up on and learn about. But there's that opportunity to think about what can I take from any one of those things and transfer it into another skill.
Over again.
Even just,
And we know you guys are looking for jobs and actively searching, but you can't look for a job all day, every day, right? So I'm sure you guys are involved or keeping yourselves busy with other things, whether it's, entertaining or volunteer work, whatever it might be. So tell us a little bit about that.
I'm not sure how Jessica feels, but I definitely know that the leisure activities that I would like to do is definitely constrained during this time. A lot of places aren't open. Can't really travel, can't really hang out with friends that much, go to eat, go shopping. I suppose you could do things like that, but it's not the same. And you're taking a risk and taking a gamble. So definitely the things I'm doing right now is not normally my kind of hobbies pre-pandemic. So usually these days, like most of the people watching this webcast, spend at home, trying to keep myself entertained while being within these four walls, watching a lot of movies.
well, then you need to check out our episode on binge worthy, because we cover like 40 shows in an hour.
Wow.
I'm gonna have to.
Yeah, you need to binge watch our episodes so then you can binge watch the shows that we're telling you about. So, if there was no pandemic, what would you have been doing?
I really like to hang out with friends, going outside,
Mm-hmm.
going hiking.
Even if you wanted to go hiking right now, it's been too hot in Dallas.
It's so hot. Yeah.
It's so bad, you guys. I go running every morning, but it's like 9:30 and I'm dying.
Ooh,
and
that's
it's
too
not
late.
a good idea. Like if you're gonna go, you should go at 6 a.m., right? I need to tell myself that every single day, but I don't. So yeah, I love to hang out with friends and do outdoorsy things, but that's definitely constrained right now.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite show you binge watched so far, though? Let's hear yours.
Probably Better Call Saul.
Oh yeah, it's a good
or one. The Crown.
Yeah. Very good.
That's up Jennifer's alley right there.
So well.
Both of those. I love Better Call Saul. Like I think it's a brilliant show.
So brilliant.
Yeah.
I just in quarantine actually watched Breaking Bad for the first time, which I know I'm like super late to the game
Love
on.
it. Yes.
Yeah. It's an awesome one though, because it was it was one of those ones like I didn't know if I could get into it, but once I did, like I just couldn't stop.
Yeah. So I've been thinking I should watch Better Call Saul. Now that I finished it.
Absolutely.
It's great.
Absolutely. So
how about you, Jessica? How is it in New York City? Has it let up much more so now than in the earlier months?
Yeah. So in the earlier months, it was like the epicenter of the virus, like total lockdown. And I was mostly back in the Dallas area for that part of it. And kind of when it started getting worse in Texas, like the coronavirus cases started spiking in Texas, is when I came back to New York. So I feel like I kind of
really smart.
Yeah. But yeah, it's definitely different. Pretty much everyone wears a mask, like close to 100% compliance with that. If you go outside, like everyone's in a mask, which is really great.
Good.
Yeah, I feel like there's this kind of idea that like New Yorkers like out for each other, and I really do see it a lot of the time. Like people are really trying to make sure the community stays safe and healthy, especially because it got so bad here. But yeah, a lot of places are closed. Restaurants are like takeout only. But there's a couple of nice parks. Central Park, I'm close to another one called Riverside. So I go out to the parks a lot and like read there, or have like very socially distanced hangouts with a couple of friends who are still in the city.
So you said you got to read some things you don't normally would. Yeah, I got to read for leisure earlier. You said so. What are you reading these days? What are some of your book picks?
Yeah, right now I'm reading Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Cool.
So you know the meaning of life now.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I've got it down.
42. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, I have this. Someone gave me as a gift a while back, like a big, like kind of nice hard copy thing of the 5 novels that are in the series,
Nice.
and I never got around to reading it. So I'm now on novel 5. So
it's an oldie but a goodie. So
yeah.
I'm glad to see that. It's a classic.
Mhm.
So pretty funny. Awesome. No, someone said too they've been baking. Which one of you said you were baking? in the
I've been
beginning?
cooking.
Cooking. Okay.
I actually don't have an oven here, so no baking for me.
Really? That's the interesting part, right? Like in the city, there's either you don't have an oven, you don't have a dishwasher, you don't have some of these amenities.
Yeah,
And
that's a good, is there anything that you really have perfected making on a stove then?
I don't know if you could ever say perfected. I've been trying to kind of remake a lot of the foods that my mom makes that I like. So she has like a really good tacos recipe. So I've been making those, kind of like frying up the tortillas and everything. And I've been making stroganoff as well,
Nice.
which
Okay.
is my more involved dish.
so
Yeah.
ladies,
Bella,
I wanted to ask you whether you've had any a change of perspective after this, since you've graduated, after you've experienced this pandemic.
I definitely have. When I was graduating, I was pretty sad because I didn't have my graduation that I worked so hard for. I kind of just put my cap and I was sitting in my living room with my parents around me. And I was pretty sad about having to move back home with my parents, back home to my hometown, because I wanted to stay in Austin or go somewhere else, go to law school. But I just knew that I had to go back home, unfortunately. I didn't have a job or I wasn't going to law school. But I had moved out of Austin on a Saturday. And that following Sunday, my mom and I went to church. And like I said, I was really sad, not feeling confident, feeling very lost about my future. And at the end of this service, the pastor, which by the way is a guest pastor from Columbia, so he didn't know me, doesn't know my name, had no idea who I was. At the end of the sermon, he said, it's like, by the way, you over there. And I was like, me? It's like, yeah, you. It's like, God's trying to tell me that, by the way, I don't know you, I don't know your story, your name, whatever, but everybody has a plan. God has a plan for everyone, but it's a very specific plan. And there'll be people who try and doubt you and say, you can't do it, it's not for you. But then one day they're gonna come back to you and say, we were wrong. And this plan is gonna bring a lot of joy to people. And so I left church that day, a day after moving back to my hometown, thinking, you know what, I have no idea what the plan is right now. I have no idea what I'm gonna do. I don't have a job yet. All I know is that it's gonna be good. It's gonna be fine one day. It'll all come together. So like many people watching this, you may not know what the plan is and what life is gonna throw at you, but you can be confident and find some relief in that one day it'll all just come together and you'll be fine.
That's really nice. It's nice to, in this age of uncertainty, being able to have some sort of something that's going to keep your anxiety at bay, or your wandering thoughts at bay. And it's so nice to have that in any form, right? That everyone may receive it in different forms. So it's good that you have sort of that that comfort going into this and moving forward. Jessica, any thing on your end?
Yeah, I guess to this point about kind of having a plan and like maybe we don't know what it is. I think this time is so uncertain for everyone. And I think it can come off maybe to like, my parents' generation, pretty much all of my friends moved back home. And like, this isn't what we were really hoping to do.
Yeah.
And I think it can come off like, oh, like, like poor them, they're can't do, what they were hoping to. And like, now they're kind of stuck or whatever. But I think like most of the people of my generation have high ambitions. Like we really do have a little bit of that idealism, that like idea that the world can change, that we can change it. And right now there's a lot, like Bella said, that's like being exposed and like things to organize around and things that we'd like to change. And I think that there actually is a lot of hope coming off of this, that like we can do big things.
Playing on that, Jessica and Bella, what is one thing that you're looking to change?
I feel like, I could go on and on about things that, desperately need to change. I mean, they're really large scale things, like, climate change, like my elementary school teacher told me today. Just, I feel like that's something that's like really present on our generation's mind. In the astrophysics field as well, like whenever you study other planets and how their atmospheres look and what it looks like if a planet overheats and kind of gets into that loop where it just keeps getting hotter, like that feedback loop, like we can kind of see that and be like, oh my gosh, that is not what we're trying to have here. So definitely climate change is something that I think is really present on a lot of our minds. And then more social issues, just in terms of like, there's been all of this, unrest around the police and around the prison industrial complex. And those are things that I think are things that our generation is like ready to try and tackle, or at least reform.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like Jessica, there's so many issues that need to be solved that you can just go on and speak forever. But of course, this webcast only lasts so long. You only have so much time. So I think that I will say, although legislation can be passed, you can have laws, you can have new amendments, right? You can have new people in positions of power. One president leaves, another comes in. But that only goes so far. There was like the Civil Rights Act, right? Like there are so many things that have been written in law that have tried to better this country and this nation, but still haven't fixed everything, right? So I think that one thing we can do on a personal level is be more compassionate and understand one another more. That is something that I think that is a little more tangible. And I think that in this pandemic, it's becoming a little bit easier to understand that we're all going through something, even though you can't see it. And because we're all going through so much, perhaps it'll be easier to understand that you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, and it's important to get to know someone prior to like making preconceived notions about them. And so just starting within yourself, starting within your home, making that small change is probably really impactful right now.
That's awesome. Thank you for saying that, Bella. We sort of strive on trying to fill our karma quotient, but I think we also need to fill our compassion quota. So maybe it's a combination of the two. So thanks for reminding us of that. You're absolutely right. Compassion is really the key to be a global citizen, especially in this day and age. So I hope folks listen to this and take, if that's the only thing they take away, and just understand that the new generation that's coming in, and you guys are blowing my mind. Like the fact that what's going on in the world is amazing. I don't think I ever even took much time to really understand what's happening, and some of it I know has been kind of thrown into your laps, but the fact that you're taking it and running with it is just mind-blowing.
Thank you both for sharing your stories with us too. I think not only does the world need more compassion, I think the world needs more courage too. And I think if we all stood up for what we actually believed in, as you're saying, and use the compassion with the courage to go forward, the things that have either been put in legislation could become realities, and such. So I think it takes both those things. And thank you, ladies, for joining us today and sharing your thoughts, comments, and stories with us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for inviting us.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. It's been great.
Loved it. Yeah. Wow, Jennifer, wasn't that amazing?
Astrophysicist was on our show. Can you believe that?
That's a rocket scientist, right? And a maybe future president of the U.S. Who knows? So these ladies are smart cookies, and I am so happy that we got a chance to speak with them, and they have such great insight. And I learned a little bit more about folks, what's happening and what they're going through right now, and just a positive outlook, even though there's a lot they have no control over, and they're just kind of dealing with it. So yeah, very thankful, and hopefully we can have a future episodes like that again with the Gen Z and other generations.
Well, it'd be great too. Maybe we'll hear from them in a couple months and see where they've landed and what stories, or even when if Jessica does go do the Peace Corps in another year, like when she comes back, to hear what happens on that, right? So,
absolutely,
yeah. I mean, some great things that they're working towards. Some great. It gives us some hope. So I think it was great today to have them on. So with that said, let's see if we have some hope for our future with our fortune cookie.
Let's do it together. Let's open it up.
I'm going to try not to make this one go flying this time. Let's see. I always get the weird ones. I think we've had this one before. It's time to get new cookies. Cooking is easy. Doing dishes is the hard part, which we talked about doing dishes earlier in the episode. So maybe that's why it came back out again.
Yeah, I think mine was it was the same thing. Is an ounce of care is worth a pound of cure.
Yeah, we had this. We need to get some new. Should we try opening another one?
No, I'm good with my cookie.
Okay. See you next time. Thank you. Bye.